My older brother won the lottery and proposed to my wife. She accepted, but I stayed silent. 7 months later, she found out why I hadn't said anything. My brother won a fortune, and my wife decided that her love had a price. She made her choice, and I just watched. But what she didn't know was that I had already prepared for the day she would regret it. Few things bring joy to a divorced man, but one of them is definitely receiving a message from an ex regretting leaving you. And on top of that, having the audacity to be mad at me for not warning her about my brother's red flags. But to be honest, there was only one red flag I knew about, and I didn't tell her. I just waited. Honestly, I couldn't feel sorry for them after what they did to me. She hadn't promised my brother to stay with him in sickness and in health. She had promised me. But if she couldn't keep the vows she made to me, why would she keep them now? To be sincere, this post is just to ask, ironically, if I'm wrong for not feeling pity when stupid choices lead to stupid results. Maybe I sound like a person with no empathy, but deep down, I know I'm 100% right. Besides, why should I help her now that she's in trouble? She wouldn't even be in this situation if she hadn't left me for my brother. I'll never forget that moment. But I need to tell you everything so you can understand what happened. 7 months ago, my brother was bragging to me, saying that now that he had money, he had power. He thought he could get anything he wanted, even my wife. We were with friends and laughed at the joke. I told Kurt he was dreaming because my wife was loyal, so he bet me that he could steal her from me. I was 110% sure she would laugh in his face. I thought he was a clown, someone who never took anything seriously. She would never leave me for that idiot. Yes, my brother had just won the lottery and was rich now, but our love meant more than that. Only those $200 proved not only that he was a fool, but that my wife was worth nothing. That day taught me a lesson. Never say never. Want to know my wife's price? A simple Amazon cart. It didn't even take him a minute to promise her the world if she left me. He said he was serious and would take care of everything, that she'd have luxury, video games, whatever she wanted. To prove he wasn't joking, he instantly paid for a $2,000 Amazon shopping cart in her account. I was speechless. How was it possible my wife sold herself for less than $2,000? Of course, I couldn't just pull that money out of nowhere. I had to work hard for it. But for my brother, with lottery winnings, it was pocket change. That night, I wanted to surprise her with big news about our future, but I was robbed of that chance when she came to tell me what had happened. We talked, but she couldn't even look me in the eyes. She laughed and said my brother was just joking, that he was a clown sometimes. I told her to cancel the order and cut contact with him. She laughed in my face and said I didn't own her. If I wanted, I could leave you for your brother, she said. She made it clear she could walk out at any time to be with a man who treated her better. That night, I slept in the guest room. She locked our bedroom door and didn't even say goodbye. The next morning, she was gone. I sent texts, I called, but she never answered. A few days later, I woke up and went to the kitchen for breakfast. There, I found a prepared breakfast and next to it, divorce papers. I needed strong coffee to get through reading that. She really was leaving me for my brother, the worst of all. A few days later, my brother texted me demanding the $200 because he'd won the bet. I signed the papers without hesitation. It made no sense to stay married to a woman like that. If money was all she wanted, let her go, but I knew that marriage would be a disaster. My wife had no idea what she was getting herself into. My brother knew the truth very well, and I wasn't going to tell her. I preferred to let her find out on her own. The day I signed the divorce papers, I smiled because I knew disaster was coming. My brother was spending recklessly, without any plan. He'd be broke soon, and she'd come running back. But not in a million years would I take her back. 7 months later, I was already recovered from the divorce, and my life couldn't have been better. I had finally overcome the humiliation and focused on my business. On the very day my ex-wife left me, I wanted to tell her that I had secured an investor and that our lives were about to change. The money would help expand my business and make it grow. Unfortunately for her, she was never there for my successes. Now she's panicking, sending me messages asking why I didn't warn her about who my brother really was. She says that if I had loved her, I would have stopped her from making the worst mistake of her life. She didn't give me many details, but it seems things went very wrong and she wanted to leave. But my brother wasn't making it easy, and that scared her. She didn't know that my brother hadn't been the same since our parents died. They always kept him under control, but his life had been miserable with no prospects. Many saw him as a loser, including my ex-wife. The truth is simple. My brother has a mental illness that makes him unstable, and I knew money would only make it worse, especially if he didn't take his medication. Our parents made sure he stayed on his meds, but since they passed away, no one else did. Few people knew about his condition because it was never something openly discussed. If he took his meds, he could seem like a normal person, but he always had some issues that made him seem like a failure. That's why our parents always tried to hide it, so he wouldn't be stigmatized. And my ex-wife? Well, now she knows the truth, maybe in another post. I'll share more details about it. Update 1, I got an unexpected visit at my house, and it wasn't rats or cockroaches, which honestly would have been a more pleasant visit. I don't even know how she found out where I live, considering I moved a month ago and bought a new house. My business has grown a lot since she left me. I won't say I'm a millionaire, far from it, but my income has tripled since then, and I was able to buy a house with the bank's help. The fact that I don't have to pay my ex-wife any money since she remarried also helps a lot. Yesterday, she showed up at my door and refused to leave without talking to me. She stood out in the sun for hours, and eventually I went out to sit on the porch with an iced tea. And there she was. She probably had a lot to say and was very thirsty too, but that tea was mine because it was hot, and I wasn't about to share it. The summary of what she wanted to tell me was this. She was very regretful for leaving me and admitted she had made her decision too quickly. Too quickly might be an understatement for what really happened. She said we had many problems in our marriage and that the fight about the Amazon shopping cart had gotten out of control. She also told me that the day she left home, she went straight into my brother's arms, and that was their first night together. After ruining everything with me, she went through with the divorce, and even though she felt bad, she comforted herself with the idea that she would be well taken care of. As I listened, I sipped my tea loudly on purpose, clinking the ice against the glass. But the marriage with my brother wasn't what she expected. Over time, some truths started coming to light, and you can already imagine which ones. She said he could be sweet one moment and unbearable the next. She couldn't understand it, but tried everything she could to make it work. Until one day, he had an unforgettable outburst that revealed a side of him that terrified her. That little detail was something only his immediate family knew. I already knew about that side of my brother because I had witnessed it before. It was another personality of his, the one he called Charlie. Since the age of 17, my brother had been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. Our parents took great care of his health, making sure he took his medication and followed a healthy routine, like getting enough sleep. But since they passed away, probably no one else made sure he kept up with that. Maybe he tried to follow his routine the best he could, but the money, my ex-wife, and the whole new life he jumped into completely destabilized him. To give you some perspective, on a bad day, Kurt could wake up in the morning with a completely different personality, doing things he normally would never do. A few hours later, he'd return to normal without remembering anything that had happened. The problem was that this Charlie personality would do some very bad things, to the point where he was expelled from school. That was when our parents took him to a specialist, and he received the diagnosis. It took years of therapy and medication until he managed to stabilize. The episodes still happened occasionally, but he had gained some control. In our hometown, when people found out about the illness, they began to see him as a freak who should be locked up. That's one of the reasons we moved. So when he got together with my wife, I was almost certain it was Charlie in charge. I knew very well that any destabilizing factor could be a trigger for his illness. And as I said, many things happened at once. Winning $2 million and getting a wife were not exactly what Kurt needed so quickly. But that's what happened. Now my ex-wife had discovered the secret and was facing a dilemma. Either she stayed with him and tried to help him get better, or she sought an annulment of the marriage since he had never informed her of his condition. But both options created problems for her. First, she didn't want to stay with him. She was afraid. Second, an annulment would mean the marriage never existed, which would also include the money. Good thing that's not my problem because she's no longer my wife, and I'm not interested in it. I just listened to everything she had to say until I finished my iced tea. Then I went inside, because it was already night, and turned off the porch lights. I have a business to run. I'm not made of gold. The next morning, my ex-wife was no longer there. Was I worried? Not at all. I live in a region where many people claim to have seen UFOs. I've never seen one myself, but I wonder if maybe they took her. If they did, they should return her soon. Probably they wouldn't just leave her in the middle of nowhere. They'd drop her off a few streets away. Some people don't like my humor. They think I should take things more seriously, like my brother's illness. Well, yes, but his illness doesn't give him the right to do whatever he wants, just like my ex-wife had no right to leave me for money. So yes, I'm going to take it with humor. What's the alternative? Crying through the whole post? And for those who said I shouldn't joke about UFOs, well, I don't even know what to answer. Update 2, the jokes practically write themselves when it comes to my brother and his wife. They're both a joke, so it makes sense that they'd end up being very funny people. Here's what happened. A few nights after my ex visited me, I was buying some snacks at a store when my brother confronted me furiously. He publicly accused me of conspiring with his wife because he had found out she had been at my house. I still don't know how he discovered that. But shortly after, she ended up on the streets. A few days later, I found out that they had really divorced, thanks to her, which was actually a smart move on her part. Apparently, my brother kicked her out of the house, but she didn't take it well. She decided to start a smear campaign against him, telling everyone he was crazy and had a split personality. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with people asking about him until I had to turn it off. One of those people even said they would go to his house to check on him and then tell me how things were. When they got there, they found bottles scattered all over the place and my brother passed out on the couch. And no, alcohol doesn't help with his condition. The place smelled horrible, and it seemed like he had been living off takeout for days. That person woke him up and told him to take a shower. He reluctantly obeyed. Meanwhile, that person cleaned up what they could and made him a sandwich with the little they found in the fridge. When he finished showering, he joined them in the kitchen and the two talked. The truth was, his life was practically ruined. If the divorce went forward, he'd be left with nothing because he didn't even have money for a lawyer. That's when she discovered his bank account was in the red. And that's why she had made that online post. He managed to report the publication and have it removed for harassment, but the damage was already done. It makes sense that my ex chose divorce instead of annulment. At this point, there wasn't much left to divide, unless they sold all the remaining assets after my brother had blown all the lottery money. Update 3. So many things to tell you all. Between the jokes I made and the things I found out, a lot happened. First, I started getting closer to my ex and asking her about the divorce. She was very stressed because even though she managed to divorce him, she wasn't going to get any money out of it. Probably I let slip a few hints that I'd be there for her after the divorce. No, I'm not thinking about getting back with her. Keep reading. Shortly after, there was an auction of my brother's assets, organized by the bank. I bought his favorite car, the one he loved showing off, and used it to take my ex-wife out for a date. I sent him pictures of us inside the vehicle, and he completely lost it. He started crying, saying he didn't need that in the worst moment of his life. He told me his life was falling apart and that he really needed my help. He even asked me to stay away from my ex-wife because, according to him, she was the one who came between us and would only cause more problems. I replied that I didn't care about her, that I only took her for a ride to take the picture and mess with him. After dropping her off at home, and even though she thought it was a date, I blocked her. It was just a little prank compared to what he had done to me months earlier. He called and texted me non-stop afterward, some of them begging for forgiveness as a brother. I only told him to get help, because his mental problems would only cause more pain. And you know what he replied? That he didn't have any mental illness, that he was only expelled from school because he pulled a prank, and that when they took him to the psychologist for bad behavior, he decided to fake hearing voices just to escape trouble. He said he had read about it and thought it would help him get away with things. That's why he seemed to recover and appear normal. In reality, he never took any medication. He only pretended to swallow the pills in front of our parents, then spat them out. At that moment, I was supposed to say I was surprised, but honestly, I wasn't. I always knew he was an idiot. The difference is that before, I thought he was a mentally unstable idiot. Now I see he's just an idiot. One who invented a personality just to avoid facing the consequences of his idiotic behavior. I told him, I still think you need help. Maybe you don't have dissociative identity disorder, but for sure some specialist would diagnose you with something because you are a very disturbed person. Was I going too far with the jokes? I don't think so. And to be honest, I don't even care. Update 4, some of you asked about the divorce between my brother and my ex. I think it's only fair to share, since you've had the patience to read my whole story up to this point. Yes, the divorce is over. And the only real winners were the lawyers who walked away with their pockets full. From what I know, there was nothing left to divide. Not even after the auction of all the things my brother had bought. My ex-wife also found out that he had lied about his illness and that, in the end, he was just being a jerk to her. You know the saying, you can dress a pig in silk, but it's still a pig. She could have chosen someone who treated her well instead of marrying for money with someone she barely knew. Yes, well, you get what you pay for. In her case, though, she got more than she bargained for. I love how everything came full circle. My brother went back to being a broke idiot, someone who now has to work to survive. And the same can be said word for word about my ex-wife. Trying. To take shortcuts in life never leads anywhere good, both. Of these people who were once part of my life learned that lesson in the best way possible, with a nice example of karma. And you know what the best part is? At the end of the divorce, many things were said. Don't ask me how I know, but I do. Apparently, my ex shouted at my brother that he could stuff as many personalities into his head as he wanted, as long as he stayed away from her. And he snapped back saying that even his personalities thought she was a gold digger. Satisfying? You bet. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there to watch the two of them screaming at each other. It would have been priceless to sit there, sipping my iced tea as loudly as possible, just to annoy them, while the lawyers watched in silence. Update. 5. My brother used mental illness as an excuse to avoid facing his problems, minimizing the people who actually suffer from such conditions. That's a serious issue. But fate wanted him to actually have 2 personalities. And in this case, it's funny to everyone except him. During the day, he's a poor man, broke because karma left him penniless, uneducated, unable to manage money, and with no ambition. At night, he's still a poor man, but now with the personality of a mall security guard. Yes, that seems to be his dominant personality, since he's even developed the classic belly from eating too much fast food. And that trait has carried over into his daytime personality too. And when I say poor, I don't just mean financially, though his job doesn't pay much either. I mean poor in spirit, poor in ambition, poor in everything a person should have. Money certainly isn't his strong suit either, since the only job he could land is one for someone who never even finished high school. I know what you're thinking. Time to prank him at work. But no, my days of jokes and revenge are over. Besides, there's a small detail. He works at night when the mall is closed, and no one can get in at that time. If it weren't illegal to trespass, maybe I'd think about giving him the scare of his life. It must be terrifying walking those dark corridors at night, especially in an area known for UFO sightings. If the aliens took my ex-wife once, it would be hilarious if he ran into them, doing some late-night shopping. She never wanted to talk about that subject. Maybe because she's busy with more important things, or maybe because it's hard to explain if they used probes. You know what's easier? Pretending that on that night, she simply came back home. Not the reality that we here on Reddit all know, because we're certified conspiracy theorists. As for her, she's also been struggling to find a job, at least one that can pay for her endless Amazon wish list. After all, few jobs pay you thousands of dollars at once. While we were married, she had a job. Not the American dream, but still a job. She quit everything when she thought my brother's money would solve her life. As far as I know, she's still trying to figure things out while living at her parents' house. Because working? Oh, no way. And yes, I know you've guessed already who's been giving me all this information. My ex-in-laws. I know many of you don't approve of in-laws in general, but I think mine deserves some credit. My ex didn't even have the courage to look them in the eyes and tell them she was leaving me for my brother. She just went silent. So I had to tell them. And when I did, my ex-father-in-law shouted, "That wicked woman did what?" That wasn't the exact word, but you get the idea. Moderators would ban me if I repeated it. After that, they called her right in front of me and yelled at her for 15 straight minutes without stopping. If you thought my words earlier were harsh, you probably wouldn't want to hear that call. The sermon was something like, "Leaving your husband for another man over an Amazon shopping cart? That's not what a decent woman does. Instead of using your butt for that, you should have used it to get a better job and buy what you wanted yourself." And so on, for 15 minutes, until her mother finished with, "You'll come crawling back here when you're done selling yourself for money." Maybe she crawled back, maybe not. But yes, she returned, asking for forgiveness. And that's how she managed to stay at their house while trying to sort out her never-ending employment and housing crisis.
Commentary, Reddit observer. What a crazy roller coaster. It's wild how greed and poor choices can tear apart both love and family. Karma really served both the brother and the ex-wife. Do you think this ending was fair, or did it go too far? If this story kept you hooked until the very end, make sure to smash that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Reddit Observer for more unbelievable Reddit stories. And don't go anywhere. 2 more mind-blowing stories are right here on the screen waiting for you. See you in the next video.